Fortunately, in most industrialized countries, your chances of becoming a murder victim are relatively low. True, murders happen every day, and in some countries with higher crime rates they are more common, but the reality is that homicide remains among the ultimate of taboos. With that said, Hollywood and other forms of media have done their part to make it seem as if crazed killers are lurking around every corner, waiting to randomly take the life of any unsuspecting person to pass by. This mentality has led many people to arm themselves with whatever weapons are legal in their country, and many more to invest in expensive home security systems. But the statistics show that most murders are not committed by strangers. Although murder is uncommon, murders committed by a spouse or significant other are the most common type. For most people, it is not the crazed killer lurking in the bushes that they should be afraid of, but the person sleeping next to them in bed. The majority of these types of murders are committed in a fit of passion, and even the ones that are premeditated are done by people with little to no criminal background. Because of those factors, spousal killers are usually quickly apprehended. Very few spousal murders become cold cases, and in the few cases that are, the detectives usually know that the perpetrator is the spouse. It is just a matter of them compiling enough evidence to make an arrest that will hold up in court. The cold murder case of Nova Welsh is unique because it is one of the few crimes of passion that went cold for decades. When Nova was murdered in 1981, the police immediately suspected her long-term boyfriend and father of her 2 children, but a lack of physical evidence prevented them from making an arrest. As the decades rolled by, many people forgot about the case, but a few determined investigators familiar with advances in technology were finally able to solve the case and bring closure to Nova's family. Nova Welsh's tragic story began in the late 1950s, spanning 2 continents and several decades. Nova Welsh was born in the late 1950s in Jamaica to a middle-class family that wanted to find more opportunities elsewhere. Jamaica's high crime rates, corruption, and political instability were all factors that contributed to the Welsh family looking abroad for a new start. Although the United States was close and is an English-speaking country, its immigration laws were fairly restrictive at the time, so the Welshes took advantage of their status as citizens in the British Commonwealth and moved to the United Kingdom. In the period immediately following World War II, the United Kingdom began opening its doors to its former colonial subjects, which meant that thousands of Indians, Pakistanis and Caribbean people, among others, came to the country for a number of different reasons. The desire to escape poverty in their home countries was the most pervasive reason. Jobs were more plentiful and paid more in Britain, and the country had a generous safety net if one were to lose his or her job. Britain also became a safe haven for political dissidents, who feared violent reprisals in their home countries. Like most immigrants around the world, the Welshes decided to move to a location where there were plenty of people from their old country to fall back on for support, so they chose the Midland city of Birmingham due to its sizable West Indian Caribbean community. Nova was 10 years old when the Welshes moved to Birmingham, and as difficult as the move was in some aspects, it was exciting in other ways for the young Jamaican immigrant. She received a better education than she would have in Jamaica, and there were far more and better material goods and creature comforts available in the United Kingdom. But there were also unseen temptations in the new land. Because Nova's parents worked long hours to make ends meet in the significantly more expensive United Kingdom, their supervision of Nova was relaxed. Although Nova stayed out of trouble on Birmingham's sometimes mean streets, she came under the influence of a charismatic young Jamaican immigrant named Osmond Bell. In the early 1970s, Osmond Bell was a familiar sight around Birmingham's Caribbean community. Bell was a smooth-talking teenager who attracted a following of other young men and boys, not to mention the attention of several girls. The young man often walked on the edge of the legal immigrant community and the underworld. Although he never accumulated a serious criminal record, he had several contacts within Caribbean organised crime groups, which he often liked to tell people as a form of a threat. One of those girls was Nova Welsh. Bell was 1 year older than Nova, but considerably more street-savvy when the two met. The young man had lived in the United Kingdom for most of his life, and could move around the city of Birmingham with ease. Nova was impressed with the fact that Osmond knew people all over the city and felt safe whenever she was with him. The 2 young Jamaican immigrants began a romance that quickly became serious. Nova moved into an apartment with Osmond, and by the late 1970s the couple had 2 sons. The hope and excitement that Osmond and Nova's relationship began with was gone by the end of the decade. Bell rarely worked, was a problem drinker, and often cheated on Nova. He also refused to commit fully to the relationship by marrying Nova, but worst of all, he was physically abusive. Bell was known to hit Nova when he got drunk or his whereabouts were questioned by her. He did his best to keep Nova isolated from her friends and family, and for the first few years of their relationship he was fairly successful. But by 1981, the young mother began making some major changes in her life that didn't involve Osmond Bell. Throughout the 1970s, Nova's sisters and friends admonished her to leave the shiftless Bell. Still, due to her traditional Caribbean roots, Nova continued to try to make the relationship work. She argued that her sons needed a father figure, but that became less and less of an issue the more Bell devolved into alcoholism and abuse. Eventually, Nova realised that Osmond Bell would never marry her, and would probably never be much of a father to their 2 sons, so she decided to move on with her life. She found full-time work, developed a new social network and started dating. In 1981, at the age of 24, Nova Welsh appeared headed in the right direction and well on her way to building a new, successful life. Nova could no longer bear Osmond's physical and psychological abuse, so she made the assertive decision to kick him out of their apartment in July 1981. Although he didn't like the situation, there was little he could do. This was a new Nova Welsh. But Osmond Bell was still in the picture. Although Osmond completely neglected all of his fatherly duties by the middle of 1981, he still kept tabs on Nova. Osmond was an extremely jealous man who believed that Nova and their children were essentially his property. As he frequented the bars and shops in the Caribbean neighbourhoods of Birmingham in the days after he was evicted, he learned that his children's mother was dating another man. Osmond Bell would not stand for this. By early August 1981, Osmond Bell was positively outraged by the situation in which he found himself. Within a matter of weeks, he was kicked out of his apartment, lost his long-term girlfriend, and had his access to his children limited. Worst of all, it appeared that his girlfriend had moved on without him by dating another man. Bell was persistent, though, and kept trying to get back with Nova. Finally, on August 18, 1981, Nova Welsh relented and allowed Bell to come to her apartment to discuss their sons. The evidence shows that Bell probably didn't go to Welsh's apartment with the intent to kill her, but instead things quickly got out of hand when Nova told him that they would never get back together. The discussion swiftly turned into an argument, which in turn led to yelling before Bell snapped, placing Nova in a chokehold, breaking her neck. Bell was immediately faced with the reality of what he had done, and that if arrested he could face a very long prison sentence. He had to cover his crime. Luckily for Bell, his method of murder was relatively clean. He didn't have to worry about cleaning up blood or other bodily fluids, and there was no weapon that could be tied to him. With that said, he knew that any suspicions related to Nova's murder would be cast on him. Instead of leaving her body for his sons to find, he decided to hide Nova in a utility closet of the apartment complex. Bell was able to drag Nova's corpse down a flight of stairs without anyone seeing him, safely reaching the utility closet that he hoped would be his ex's final resting place, at least long enough to obfuscate the police investigation. After Bell placed Nova's body in the closet, he realised that the door didn't have a lock or even a proper latch. The broken closet door kept swinging open every time he tried to close it. Osmond Bell was never seen as a particularly intelligent person by those who knew him, but he was resourceful. Utilising his resourceful nature, Bell took the piece of gum he was chewing, placed it in the door jamb and closed the closet door. He then went on his way as if nothing happened. Nova's body wasn't discovered until several days later when residents of the apartment complex complained about a rotten smell emanating from the little-used utility closet. When maintenance checked the source of the odour, they were shocked to find Nova Welsh's partially decomposed body. As with any homicide, the detectives immediately focused their attention on those closest to Nova who may have had reasons to kill her, Osmond Bell and her current boyfriend. Bell and the current boyfriend were cooperative with the police and both denied having anything to do with Nova's murder. The detectives dutifully collected all the evidence at the crime scene, but there was little they could do with the evidence based on the technology available at the time. The killer left no fingerprints in the utility closet, and although the prints of Bell and Nova's new boyfriend were found in her apartment, there were legitimate reasons for those being there. The detectives next turned to investigating the backgrounds of both Nova's new boyfriend and Bell. Nothing in Nova's new boyfriend's background suggested that he was violent, but the police quickly learned that Bell had a history of violence towards Nova. Osmond Bell was looking more and more like the killer, but then one of Nova's friends turned a letter she had received over to the police. The letter claimed to have been penned by a woman who witnessed Nova's new boyfriend commit the murder. It was unsigned, and the supposed writer claimed that she was too afraid to come forward publicly at that point. The actual author of the letter was Osmond Bell, who, although not especially intelligent, was clever enough to know that such a ruse could throw the police off his trail. Although the detectives had a gut feeling that Bell was the killer, the letter cast doubt on that theory. There was also no physical evidence that tied Bell or the other boyfriend to the murder, so the case went cold. As the decades went by, Osmond Bell must have surely thought he got away with murder. There were no witnesses to his crime, and it seemed as though he had effectively cast enough suspicion on another person to bring the investigation to a standstill. Bell went on with his life, but as he did so, advances in science were catching up to criminal investigation procedures. Today, the process of DNA profiling is an everyday part of police work, and most people in general know something about the procedure due to the numerous television shows, both documentary and fictional, which highlight its use in investigations. DNA profiling was first used successfully in a court case in the United Kingdom during the late 1980s, and by 2016 it had been used to capture thousands of killers, rapists, and other types of criminals around the world. Armed with this new technology, Birmingham homicide investigators reopened the Nova Welsh murder case and obtained court orders for DNA samples from both Osmond Bell and Nova Welsh's other boyfriend. Both samples were compared with the small amount of DNA procured from the piece of gum Bell had used to keep the utility closet door closed. Bell's DNA matched that acquired from the gum. Osmond Bell was charged with murder in 2016 and went to trial in early 2017. Although the DNA evidence was compelling enough to place Bell at the scene of the crime, the jury didn't think he killed Welsh as a result of premeditation. Bell was acquitted of murder, but found guilty of manslaughter. But if the Jamaican killer thought he would get off lightly, he was wrong. When he went before the court for sentencing, he was given a verbal lashing by the judge, who found it particularly disturbing that Bell could commit such an act on the mother of his children. Having killed her, you concealed her body, doing nothing to assuage the pain and grief of your own children. When the police became involved, you thought it was getting a little hot. You wrote a letter intending to point suspicion away from yourself and towards someone else, said sentencing Judge Patrick Thomas. Judge Thomas then handed down a 36-year prison sentence, half of which must be served behind bars. Because Bell is now 60 years old, it could very well be a life sentence. Hey friends, thank you for listening to today's story. Make sure to click the notification icon to stay updated on all future narrations. I release new videos twice every day at 10 AM and 8 PM Eastern Time. If you have a story to share, please send it to the email displayed on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like and leave an encouraging comment. It really helps me keep bringing you more narrations like this. If you'd like to support the channel even more, you can get early access to all future narrations and bonus content over on Patreon. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.